The morning sun did its best to warm the concrete and grass of Northwood High School, but it failed miserably. A crisp autumn wind cut through the parking lot, sending discarded candy wrappers skittering across the pavement like tumbleweeds. The first bell was still 20 minutes away, which meant the courtyard, the school's central hub of social activity, was packed with students soaking up the last possible seconds of freedom before the day began. Clusters of girls in trendy leggings and oversized sweaters huddled on the benches, sipping iced coffees and scrolling through their phones. Groups of boys in Letterman jackets loitered near the flagpole, their laughter loud and performative. This was the daily ritual, a parade of personalities, cliques, and hierarchies, all established and enforced before the second bell even rang. Into this carefully curated social ecosystem walked Riley Kane. She moved against the current of students, her head down, her hands shoved deep into the pockets of her field jacket. The jacket was standard military-issue surplus, a faded green and brown camouflage pattern that had seen better decades. It was at least 2 sizes too big, the sleeves rolled up to reveal thin wrists, and it hung on her lanky frame like a tarp draped over a scarecrow. She paired it with the same plain black jeans and scuffed combat boots she wore every day. The reaction was immediate and predictable. "Whoa! Watch out, everybody!" A voice rang out from the bench near the main entrance. "It's Rambo! She's gonna call in an airstrike if we don't hand over our lunch money." A wave of snickering followed. Riley's jaw tightened, but she kept walking. A tall boy with perfect hair and an even more perfect varsity jacket stepped into her path, blocking the doorway. He held up his hands in mock surrender. "Please don't hurt me. I surrender. Take me to your leader." Or whatever. This was Kyle Masters, quarterback of the football team, and the unofficial king of the senior class. He thrived on an audience, and right now he had one. His buddies flanked him, grinning. Riley stopped. She looked up at him, her expression utterly neutral. "You're blocking the door, Kyle." "I'm blocking the door?" he repeated, turning to his friends with a look of exaggerated disbelief. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was in the way of a top-secret mission. My bad. Is the Pentagon expecting you?" He gestured at her jacket. "What is this, anyway? Going for a hunt later? Duck season? Or wabbit season?" "My dad gave it to me," Riley said, her voice quiet but even. "Your dad?" Kyle's eyebrows shot up. "Right. Is your dad like a general or something? Is that why you think you're so special, walking around here like you're better than everyone?" "I don't think I'm better than anyone," Riley said. "I just want to get to my locker." She tried to step around him, but he shifted, mirroring her movement. The crowd around them had grown, sensing a performance. Phones were half raised. "You know," Kyle continued, warming to his theme, "most girls wear like actual clothes to school. You know, stuff with color, stuff that fits. My little sister has a Halloween costume that looks less ridiculous than that thing." He flicked the edge of her sleeve with his finger. Riley looked down at where he'd touched her jacket, then back up at him. For a fleeting second, something flickered in her eyes. Not sadness, not anger, but a deep, weary disappointment. Then it was gone. "You done?" she asked. Kyle blinked, taken aback by her lack of reaction. He'd expected tears or a sharp retort, something he could volley back. Her flat affect was disarming. He recovered quickly, stepping aside with a grand, sweeping bow. "By all means, Sergeant Kane, proceed to your classified destination." Riley walked through the door without a backward glance. As she passed, she heard a girl whisper loudly to her friend, "It's like literally all she wears, every single day. Does she not own a mirror?" "Maybe she sleeps in a bunker," the friend giggled back. Riley heard every word. She always did. The lockers lining the hallway were a blur of red metal as she walked, and her stomach churning with a familiar, sickening lurch. She reached her locker, number 247, near the science wing, and spun the combination with practiced ease. As she traded her backpack for a binder, a pair of sneakers appeared beside her. "Hey, Riles." She didn't need to look up to know it was Maya Chen, her only friend, and the only person in this school who seemed to operate on a different frequency than everyone else. Maya was the editor of the school newspaper, a tiny firecracker of a girl with thick-framed glasses and an unwavering sense of loyalty. "Don't," Riley mumbled into her locker. "Just don't." "I won't," Maya said, leaning against the adjacent locker. "I will, however, say that Kyle Masters is a certified Neanderthal with the emotional intelligence of a spoon, and that jacket is still cool. It's a character." Riley finally turned to face her. Maya's expression was one of genuine concern, not pity. That was why Riley tolerated her. Maya never pitied her. "It's not the jacket, Maya. You know it's not. It's me. It's always been me." Maya sighed. "It's not you. It's them. They're bored. Their lives are so small and easy that they have to manufacture drama to feel interesting. You're just an easy target because you're different." She paused. "Have you heard back yet?" The question hung in the air. Riley's hand instinctively went to the pocket of her jacket, where a folded piece of paper lay against her thigh. She'd read it 100 times since it arrived 3 days ago. The words were seared into her brain. "No," Riley lied, her voice flat. "Not yet." Maya didn't believe her for a second, but she knew better than to push. "Okay. Well, when you do, I'm here. Now come on, let's get to homeroom before Mr. Grantham starts his lecture on the importance of punctuality." She threw a mock scathing look down the hall. "The man acts like we're not all going to be late for our own funerals." Riley allowed herself a small, genuine smile. It was the first one of the day. "Thanks, Maya." As they walked to class, Riley's hand stayed in her pocket, her fingers tracing the sharp crease of the letter. It wasn't from the Pentagon. It wasn't from a general. It was from a U.S. Army recruiter, and it wasn't an invitation. It was a confirmation. The day unfolded in its usual monotonous, agonizing crawl. In history class, they discussed World War II, and Riley, for once, felt a spark of engagement. She knew the material, not just from textbooks, but from late-night conversations with her father, a man who rarely spoke of his time in the service, but whose entire being was shaped by it. When the teacher asked a question about the strategy in the Pacific Theater, Riley's hand shot up before she could stop herself. She gave a concise, accurate answer, mentioning the island-hopping campaign and its logistical challenges. The teacher, Mr. Harrison, nodded appreciatively. "Excellent, Riley. Very detailed." From the back of the room, a low voice muttered, "Probably watches the military channel all day because she has no friends." A few students snickered. Riley's face burned, but she kept her eyes fixed forward on the chalkboard. The spark of engagement died, replaced by the familiar cold weight in her chest. Lunch was the worst. The cafeteria was a minefield. Riley sat at the far end of a table near the window, a sort of no-man's land between the popular crowd and the band kids. Maya was at a newspaper meeting, so Riley was alone, picking at a bland school pizza and staring out at the empty football field. The field was her favorite view. It was just grass and dirt and white lines, but it was open, it was quiet, and it felt possible. It was a place where things could happen. She often imagined a helicopter there, not a Black Hawk, necessarily, but something. A symbol of arrival, of escape. A shadow fell over her tray. She looked up, expecting Maya, but it was a girl named Brittany, one of Kyle's court. She was flanked by 2 other girls, all wearing matching expressions of manufactured concern. "Hey, Riley," Brittany cooed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We were just talking, and we were wondering—" Riley braced herself. "Wondering what?" Brittany leaned in, her eyes wide with faux innocence. "We were wondering if you're like, okay, I mean, Is everything all right at home? Because, the clothes, it's just a cry for help, right? We're here for you if you need, like, a coat drive or something." Her friends giggled. Brittany straightened up, a triumphant smirk on her face. "Just let us know. We care." Riley stared at her, the pizza turning to sawdust in her mouth. The anger was there, a hot ball of fire in her gut, but she had learned long ago that showing it was a mistake. It was fuel for their fire. So she did the only thing she could do. She turned her gaze back to the football field. "No, thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Brittany stood there for a moment, and the silence more damning than any insult Riley could have hurled. The performance hadn't gone as planned. With a dramatic eye roll, she and her friends flounced away. Riley's eyes remained fixed on the 50-yard line. Her hand went back to her pocket, to the letter. Report to MEPS on November 15th for physical examination and processing. That was next week. Next week, she could take the first real step. For now, she had to survive the hallways, the whispers, and the daily gauntlet of cruelty. The football field stretched out before her, green and quiet, a silent promise of the day she would finally leave it all behind. The week that followed was more of the same, a grinding routine of isolation and low-grade torment. Kyle's jokes got old, but his audience's laughter never did. Brittany's comments became more pointed, more personal. The camouflage jacket became a symbol of everything they found weird and wrong about Riley Kane. They didn't know it was her father's. They didn't know he'd worn it in a country most of them couldn't find on a map, or that he'd given it to her on the day she'd told him she was going to join. They didn't know it was armor. Friday arrived, cold and gray, the sky a heavy blanket of clouds that seemed to press down on the school. It was a game day. That night, Northwood was playing their arch rivals, and the entire school was buzzing with a manic pre-game energy. Students wore jerseys and school colors. Hallways were plastered with posters. Kyle Masters walked the halls like a conquering hero, accepting high fives and well wishes. Riley, in her camouflage, was more invisible than ever, and she preferred it that way. Her fifth period was just ending. Riley was packing up her books in English class when the intercom crackled to life. "Mr. Atkins?" The principal's secretary's voice echoed through the room. The teacher, a weary man in his 50s, walked to the phone on the wall. "Yes, Margie?" "Mr. Atkins, is Riley Kane in your class?" Every head in the room swiveled toward Riley. She felt her face go pale. This was it. Her heart hammered against her ribs. They were calling her to the office. It must be about the letter. It must be about MEPS. Something had gone wrong. "She's here, Margie. Hold on." Mr. Atkins looked at Riley, his eyebrow raised. "Riley, you're wanted in the principal's office." A collective "ooh" rippled through the room. Someone muttered, "Busted." Riley gathered her things, her hands trembling slightly. But as she walked past the desks, she could feel their eyes on her, burning holes in her back. She stepped into the hallway and the door clicked shut behind her, muffling the immediate eruption of whispered speculation. The hallway was eerily quiet. Just the distant slam of a locker, the echo of a teacher's voice from behind a closed door. She walked toward the main office, her combat boots squeaking on the polished linoleum. Her mind raced. What if they'd found something in her background check? What if her dad's old injury disqualified her? What if... She rounded the corner into the main administrative hallway and stopped dead. Principal Morrison was standing outside his office, but he wasn't alone. Flanking him were two people Riley had never seen before. They were both in crisp, dark dress uniforms. One was a man, broad-shouldered and stern-faced, with a chest full of ribbons. The other was a woman, her posture so straight she looked like she could be used as a measuring stick. They both wore the rank of captain. For a moment, Riley forgot how to breathe. There she is, Principal Morrison said, his voice unusually warm. He gestured for her to approach. Riley, come here. You have some visitors. Riley walked forward on autopilot, her legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. She stopped in front of them, her eyes wide. The woman captain spoke first. Her face, which had been professionally neutral, softened into a warm smile. Riley Kane? She asked, though she clearly knew the answer. Yes, ma'am, Riley managed to croak out. The captain extended her hand. I'm Captain Evans, U.S. Army. This is Captain Davis. We're with the 3rd Battalion, 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment. The 161st. Riley's brain short-circuited. The Night Stalkers. The most elite helicopter unit in the entire world. Her dad had told her stories about them. They were legends. They flew the most dangerous missions in the darkest nights for the most elite ground forces. Delta, SEALs. They were the ones who went in when no one else could. Captain Davis, the man, stepped forward. His stern face cracked into a grin that transformed him completely. I'm told you have a letter in your pocket, he said. A confirmation for MEPS processing next week. Riley's hand flew to her pocket, instinctively protecting the paper. How did you... We have our ways, Captain Evans said with a wink. But that's not why we're here. Riley, your ASVAB scores. On your physical fitness tests, your interviews with the recruiter, they didn't just get lost in the system, they got noticed. She paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. By some people upstairs. Riley stared, speechless. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Captain Davis looked at Principal Morrison. Sir, is there any chance we could borrow Riley for the next hour or so? We have something we'd like to show her, something we think she's earned. Morrison, looking just as stunned as Riley, nodded. Of course. Riley, go ahead. Riley followed the 2 officers out of the office and through the main doors of the school. The cold air hit her face, but she didn't feel it. They walked across the courtyard, past the benches where she'd been tormented just days before, and stopped at the edge of the parking lot. Then she heard it, a low, distant thwump, thwump, thwump. The sound was faint at first, a rhythmic pulse that vibrated in her chest more than her ears. It grew louder, faster, the air itself beginning to tremble. Captain Evans pointed to the sky. Look! Riley looked. Coming over the tree line to the east, low and fast, was a helicopter. It wasn't just any helicopter. It was a UH-60 Blackhawk painted in a flat, matte black that seemed to swallow the gray daylight. It was sleek, menacing, and utterly beautiful. It flew directly over the school, so low Riley could see the pilots in the cockpit, could feel the wind from its rotors whipping her hair into her face. It continued on, its destination clear, the football field. Students were already pouring out of the school's side doors, and drawn by the incredible noise. Teachers followed, shouting for order, but no one was listening. Kyle Masters and his football teammates stopped their walkthrough and stared, their mouths agape. Brittany and her friends, mid-sip of their lattes, froze like statues. Maya, her camera dangling from her neck, pushed her way to the front of the crowd, her eyes scanning frantically for Riley. The Blackhawk hovered for a moment over the 50-yard line, a massive mechanical dragonfly, its rotors kicking up a tornado of dust and torn turf. Then, with a grace that defied its size, it settled onto the field, its landing gear sinking slightly into the grass. The rotors slowed, the whine of the engines dying down to a powerful idle. Captain Davis turned to Riley. "Well," he shouted over the noise, "shall we?" Riley looked at him, and then at Captain Evans, then at the impossible machine sitting on her high school's football field. She looked back at the crowd of students, their faces a kaleidoscope of shock, confusion, and awe. She saw Kyle, his face pale, his confidence utterly shattered. She saw Brittany, for once in her life, with absolutely nothing to say. She took a deep breath, the cold air filling her lungs with something she'd never felt before in this place. It wasn't just hope. It wasn't just validation. It was the beginning. Riley Kane, in her oversized camouflage jacket, walked across the parking lot, through the gaping crowd, and onto the football field, toward the waiting Black Hawk. The walk across the football field was the longest and shortest walk of Riley's life. Each step felt heavy, grounded in the reality of the torn-up turf, yet surreal, but as if she were walking through a dream. The noise of the helicopter's idling engines was a physical force, a deep thrumming that she could feel in her bones. The rotors, still turning in a lazy, powerful circle, sliced through the air above her. She was acutely aware of the silence behind her. The usual cacophony of the schoolyard, the shouts, the laughter, the cruel jokes, had been replaced by a stunned, collective hush. 500 pairs of eyes were fixed on her back. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She could feel the weight of their stares, but for the first time it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a spotlight. Captain Evans walked beside her, her stride confident and measured. Captain Davis was a few steps ahead, already approaching the helicopter's open side door. As they got closer, Riley could see more details. The matte black paint was scuffed and worn in places, the rivets along the fuselage, the menacing shape of the miniguns mounted on the sides. This wasn't a show pony. This was a war horse. A crew chief in a flight suit and helmet jumped down from the cabin, giving Captain Davis a quick salute. He then turned and, with a broad grin, offered a hand to Riley. "Welcome aboard, future Night Stalker," he shouted over the engine noise. Riley grasped his hand, and he helped her up into the cabin. The interior was a world of utilitarian metal, canvas webbing, and avionics. Straps hung from the ceiling. The floor was bare and scratched. It smelled of jet fuel, hydraulic fluid, and sweat. It was the most beautiful thing Riley had ever seen. Captain Evans climbed in after her and gestured to a canvas jump seat along the wall. Riley sat down, and the crew chief handed her a heavy headset with a microphone. She put it on, and instantly the roar of the engines was reduced to a muffled hum. A new world of sound opened up. The calm, professional chatter of the pilots in the cockpit over the intercom. "Okay back there, Chief?" "Good to go. Our guest is seated." "Roger that. Nighthawk is ready for departure." Captain Evans's voice came through the headset, clear and warm. "You okay, Riley?" Riley looked around the cabin, at the two elite officers, at the crew chief checking his equipment, at the pilots in the cockpit flipping switches. She looked out the open door at the crowd of students, now just a sea of faces pressed against the fence line. She saw Maya near the front, a tiny figure waving frantically. Riley raised a hand and gave a small wave back. "I'm more than okay, ma'am," she said into the mic, her voice surprisingly steady. The engines changed pitch, the deep thrumming rising to a powerful whine. The rotors above them accelerated, the thwump, thwump, thwump becoming a continuous deafening roar. The helicopter lifted off the ground, smoothly and effortlessly. Riley felt her stomach lurch, not with fear, but with pure, unadulterated exhilaration. They rose straight up, the football field shrinking below them. She saw the 50-yard line, the goal posts, the track. She saw the school building, the parking lot, the courtyard. From up here, it all looked so small, so insignificant. The kids in the crowd were just specks. Kyle Masters was just a speck. Then the helicopter tilted forward, and they accelerated away, leaving Northwood High School behind. For the next hour, Riley Kane experienced what it felt like to fly. They soared over the town she'd grown up in, the streets and houses looking like a model train set. They followed a winding river, its surface glittering in the weak afternoon sun. The pilots, aware they had a special guest, put the big helicopter through its paces. They banked hard, the world tilting crazily outside the window. They dropped low, skimming the treetops, the branches seeming to reach up for them. They climbed high. the sky turning a deeper, richer blue. Captain Davis, sitting across from her, pointed out landmarks through the window, explaining the capabilities of the aircraft, the nature of their missions. He spoke of night vision goggles, of terrain-following radar, and of inserting special forces teams into hostile territory under the cover of total darkness. He spoke of precision, of teamwork, of a standard that accepted nothing less than perfection. Riley listened, her eyes wide, her heart soaring higher than the helicopter ever could. This was it. This was what she had been dreaming of, what she had been enduring the taunts and the isolation for. Not just the military, not just flying. This, the brotherhood and sisterhood of the Night Stalkers, the absolute pinnacle of skill and courage. When they finally circled back toward the school, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The football field, lit by the fading light and the first glow of the stadium lights, looked like a small green postage stamp. The landing was as smooth as the takeoff. The Blackhawk settled onto the field, the rotors slowly winding down. The crew chief opened the door and the cold evening air rushed in. Captain Evans removed her headset and looked at Riley. "Riley, the reason we came here today wasn't just to give you a ride, although I hope you enjoyed it." Riley nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "We've been tracking your progress for a while," Captain Evans continued. "The Army recruiter flagged your file. The scores, the physicals, the psychological profile. It's a specific combination. We see a lot of people who want to fly. We see very few who have the raw material to fly with us." She paused. "The 161st is unlike any other unit in the world. The training is the hardest you will ever face. The standards are inhuman. People quit every day. People wash out. But the ones who make it, now they become part of a family that looks out for its own." Captain Davis leaned forward. "We can't promise you'll make it through the selection process. No one can. That's up to you. But we can promise you this. You have what it takes to try. And we want you to try." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black coin. It was heavy, with the distinctive crest of the 161st SOAR on one side, a winged dagger, a scroll, and the words, "Night Stalkers Don't Quit." He handed it to Riley. "This is for you, a token, to remind you when things get hard, and they will get hard, that someone believes you can do this." Riley took the coin. It was cold in her palm, but it felt like it was burning with potential. She looked at the two captains, at the crew chief, at the pilots who were now climbing out of the cockpit, and they were all looking at her, not with pity, not with curiosity, but with respect. The respect of those who had been through the fire for one who was about to enter it. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I won't let you down." "We know you won't," Captain Evans said with a smile. "Now, let's get you back to solid ground. You've got a lot of work to do before MEPS." Riley climbed out of the helicopter, her boots sinking into the churned-up turf. The stadium lights had fully come on now, bathing the field in a bright white glow. The crowd was still there, held back by a line of teachers and now a few police officers who had arrived to manage the scene. As she walked away from the Blackhawk, the silence from the crowd was different. It wasn't the stunned silence of earlier, it was a reverent silence. And the silence of people witnessing something they didn't fully understand, but knew was important. She saw Kyle Masters. He was standing near the front of the crowd, his varsity jacket zipped against the cold. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, confusion, embarrassment, and something that looked almost like shame. He caught her eye, and for a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something. But he didn't. He just looked down at his feet. She saw Brittany and her friends huddled together, their usual smugness replaced by a wary uncertainty. They wouldn't meet her gaze. And then she saw Maya, who had ducked under the police tape and was running toward her. Maya threw her arms around Riley, squeezing her tight. "Oh my God, Riley," Maya breathed into her ear. "Oh my God, what just happened? Who were they? Why did they—" She pulled back, her eyes wide. "Was that about the army? Was that about you joining?" Riley smiled, a real, genuine, ear-to-ear smile that Maya had never seen on her face before. "That," she said, holding up the black coin, "was about the future." The next morning, the story was everywhere. Local news stations led with the footage, shot from a dozen different cell phones, of the black helicopter landing on the high school football field. The headlines screamed, "Mystery helicopter lands at Northwood High." Elite military unit visits local student. Who is Riley Kane? The school was a different place on Monday. The whispers were still there, but they had changed. They weren't whispers of ridicule anymore. They were whispers of awe. "She's going to be a pilot for the Night Stalkers," had I heard. "My cousin is in the Army. He says that unit is like the best of the best." Did you see the way those officers looked at her? Like she was already one of them? Kyle Masters avoided her. When their paths did cross in the hallway, he looked away, his face reddening. Brittany and her friends gave her a wide berth. The cruelty had evaporated, replaced by a cautious, uncomfortable respect. Riley didn't revel in it. She didn't walk the halls with her nose in the air. She simply continued as she always had, quiet and focused. But the weight was gone. The cold weight in her chest had been replaced by a warm, steady hum, like the idling engine of a Black Hawk. A few weeks later, on a cold, clear November morning, Riley Kane stood in front of the military entrance processing station in the city. She was dressed in civilian clothes, a simple pair of jeans and a sweater. Her camouflage jacket was safely at home, hanging in her closet. She didn't need it for armor anymore. She was early. She always was. She stood outside the nondescript government building, watching the sun rise over the city skyline. In her pocket, her fingers brushed against a small metal object, the Night Stalker coin. It was always with her now. A car pulled up, and Maya jumped out, her hair a mess, her eyes bright. "I made it! I thought I'd never find parking." She ran up to Riley, out of breath. "Are you ready for this?" Riley looked at the building, the place where her new life would officially begin. She thought of the football field, the Black Hawk, the two captains who had seen something in her that she was only beginning to see in herself. "So I was born ready," she said. Maya hugged her, fierce and quick. "You go be a badass, and write to me, and don't forget about us little people when you're flying presidents around." Riley laughed, a sound that was becoming more and more common. "I won't forget, and I'm not flying presidents yet. I have to get through basic training, flight school, selection, and about a million other things first." Yeah, Maya waved her hand dismissively. "Details." A bus pulled up, and a group of other young men and women, all looking nervous and excited, climbed out. They were her future classmates, her future competition, her future brothers and sisters. Riley took a deep breath, the cold air filling her lungs. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked toward the door. She didn't look back. And the girl they used to tease was gone. In her place stood a soldier, a warrior in training, a future Night Stalker. The rotors were just beginning to turn.